I don't believe it. My neighbor in Nairobi. I don't see. Tu peux toujours me consulter pour les. Donc avec Camille Germain.
Dear colleagues, we will start our meeting. Thank you so much for coming. The fact that we are so packed in this meeting, it shows that there is a big interest in the topic. And many thanks to all the experts and the partners of this project. But I think it's really, Shipra, as you are saying, it's a movement now.
Totally.
Yeah, localization SDGs is a movement. So we're part of the movement of this. So we have also quite many people online. Just to say that this meeting is taking place online and in person. We will do recording out of the meeting. We will put onto the web page, so it will be possible to access this information later on. This meeting is a side event. The side event of Regional Forum Sustainable Development, and it is at the same time VNR-VLR Studio, evidence-based approaches in the development of voluntary local reviews, experiences and best practices, focusing on Eastern Europe and Central Asia. So it's a part of the project funded by UN Development Account and led by UN Habitat. It's a project which is a joint project of actually several organizations. UN Habitat as a lead partner, UNECE also to an extent our partner Regional Commission for Asia, UNESCO, UCLG, Sarah is here, UN DESA will be joining us online from New York. So, without spending more time, it is my pleasure to give floor to representatives of our partner organizations. So, first of all, Paula Deda, Director of the UNECE Forest, Land and Housing Divisions, whom you already met yesterday, who was in the SDG roundtable. So, Paula, please, work with you.
Thank you so much. And I'm also part of the movement. Right?
You're the champion of the movement.
Do we get a badge or something?
We're working on it.
Well, thank you so much. And I'm very happy to see so many representatives of national and local governments, both yesterday and today. Many partners, many colleagues, and of course, UNECE is happy to always have UN Habitat on the side. Let me introduce this event. I will not mention the project that led to this event because we already mentioned. But before starting, I would like to express my special thanks to our colleagues at the University of Geneva, is our UNECE Center of Excellence of Smart Cities and Sustainable Urban Development, for their active engagement in the organization of this VNR-VLR Studio and the refreshments that were generously provided for this meeting. We always have to thank our sponsors because honestly, without them, we would not be here. So thank you so much. And of course, for their ongoing support to our work on urban issues as Center of Excellence. Very much appreciated. I'm supposed to have some slides, I think. I don't know if everybody can see them. In any case, just for you to give you a bit of background, UNECE was established to foster economic integration at the regional level. So UNECE, not only us and in covering cities, but UNECE as a whole is working to promote regional sustainable development through its normative work and activities of intergovernmental bodies. The Committee on Urban Development, Housing and Land Management is only one of many committees. Every year, and you are part of it now, UNECE convenes the Regional Forum on Sustainable Development, which support exchanges and experiences amongst diverse stakeholders, including, and this year in particular with SDG 9 cities, in the implementation of the SDG agenda. Actually, since 2020, UNECE also organized the Forum of Mayors. I'm very proud, and every time I mention this name because it wasn't easy to get there. The forum really enables mayors to engage directly in the work of the United Nations. And when I say directly, I mean in their own capacity. And this is unique in the UN system. Mayors in other fora or forums are engaged as part of the civil society. In the Forum of Mayors, they engage as mayors, and they have the right to adopt their own declarations, prepare their recommendations, and forward them in through the system of ECE up to ECOSOC. So the decision of establishing the Forum of Mayors as it is now was taken on the 13th of January, so it's recent. What you saw the previous years was a pilot, and now we have the third Forum of Mayors, which is really the result of a long negotiation and the approval of our member states. The forum will help to foster connections between local and national, because this is one of the main purposes, but also strengthening the VLR-VNR interlinkages and the localization of SDGs. There is actually, I can already tell you, a special panel in October dedicated to VLRs. VLRs have become one of the main tools for local and regional governments to monitor and report on SDGs progress. Much more importantly, they are a powerful accelerator of SDG localization and promoting better quality of life for cities inhabitants, including through the promotion of affordable, decent housing, sustainable urban mobility, greener and more sustainable cities. Let me tell you that in our SDG discussion yesterday, the word VLRs came out several times by several cities and several national governments. And it was stressed how they are keys that go in two directions. They allow the city to show their citizens how much is done. At the same time, they place you in the international arena when it comes to urban planning and show that you're really engaged and active. And many VLRs are now also connected to the national ones, often put in their appendixes, so they come together with the VNR. Since 2015, UNECE is supporting SDG localization through smart sustainable city profiles based on the evaluation using the key performance indicators for mass sustainable cities. When I'm saying this, I'm looking at Bishkek because we have heard that you are quite happy, for instance, with one of these smart sustainable cities profiles, because they are just a tool that then leads to other steps and bigger steps. So it's indeed what you call accelerator. Right? Let's say that these profiles are really accelerators for other actions to follow. So we don't stop just in the analysis. In these studies, in the 10 cities for which we have prepared these profiles, we'll also have offered support in formulating priorities for achieving SDGs and in the preparation of specific technical projects for financing to accelerate the achievement. We will continue working with the cities in this very practical way to improve the quality of life of people and not to leave anybody behind. So we are really happy to look for other cities that are interested, and of course other donors that are interested in helping us with this. So I stop here. I wish you a very productive discussion and invite you back to Geneva, of course, during the UNECE Urban Resilience Week, which starts the 2nd and 3rd of October with the Forum of Mayors and continues then the 4th, 5th, and 6th with the Committee on Urban Development, Housing and Land Management. I'll be happy to follow with you for a while. Then unfortunately I have another engagement, so I will silently leave you in 20 minutes, but happy to be here in the meanwhile, and thank you for coming. So yes, thank you.
Thank you very much, Paola. It is my pleasure to give next word to Shipra Suri, who is Chief of the Urban Practice Branch of the Global Solution Division at UN Habitat. So thank you, Shipra, for your ongoing many years of cooperation. I think many things happen thanks to this, to your leadership and to our cooperation.
Thanks very much. And it's really an absolute pleasure to be here. I feel very much at home at ECE, thanks to our friendship and our partnership. My team was trying to give me directions to this room, and I said, guys, it's okay. We've met in this room many times, and we've had these great conversations here, which we're very happy to build on today. But honestly, this is such a milestone moment for us. This project is a milestone moment. It's great to see, the cities and welcome the cities and the partner countries that are engaged with us. Particularly, it's great to welcome all the partners. Of course, to be here with UNECE and UCLG, University of Geneva, as well as other experts and friends and co-conspirators. Madrid is here. Portugal is here, Switzerland is here, just those who are part of this movement and driving it very much forward. I wasn't here yesterday, and I'm sorry that I missed the conversations, but I was at our executive board where SDG localization was a very big and very central part of the discussion. And honestly, when I look at member states saying, and this was not our words, I promise I didn't write that speech. Somebody said, this is an SDG super year and it's an SDG localization super year. It's great. It's many years of coming, here. And UCLG has been championing this movement since really almost before the SDGs were adopted. So really, it's very nice to see member states and partners adopting this language, adopting the approach, and adopting a strong commitment to.
Заходим навстречу.
We're of course, we're very happy to be working in this region with ECE for many reasons, and really we build on your strengths, Gulnara, and your presence, your expertise, your many years of working here. But for us, this is really a very important first project on this topic, around this issue in the Eastern Europe and Central Asia region. This is for us quite a breakthrough, and we have you to thank for it. We of course look at VLRs, as Pano just said, they're accelerators. They're very powerful accelerators for advancing the SDGs. They're an important tool to report on what cities are doing. And as you said, they're an important, they present an important common language for cities to engage with each other in a peer network. But even more importantly, they represent a new way of driving evidence-based policymaking within the cities and a new opportunity to dialogue with for cities to dialogue with national governments. Because national governments have been driving the SDG agenda forward through VNRs. They were the ones who made the commitment to the SDGs. They were the ones who report on the SDGs, and local governments often come as an afterthought in that. The VLRs are changing that equation. And this is why this particular VLR-VNR conversation, this studio, is very, very important. For us, the whole instrument, the purpose of VLRs as an instrument driving multi-level governance is an even bigger purpose than what we see in front of us. And this is absolutely central. Data remains a challenge. Despite all the work that you have done, that we have done, we know that availability of data, quality of data. I mean, in Madrid, we just launched your VLR, 36 hours ago or 2 days ago. And we know that, if a city like Madrid can struggle with data, then forget about anywhere else, right? It remains a challenge. And the use of that data, the disaggregation of that data, the deployment of that data, the analysis of that data to draw some worthwhile conclusions and advance the conversation on impactful policies is absolutely the biggest challenge that many cities face today. And I think this project and the work we do together should help look for solutions and ways to address that big data challenge to build data ecosystems that connect local and national and global. They don't. They don't speak to each other, regardless of all our efforts for many, many years to do that. As I started with saying, the VLR and VNR connection is very important for us, and really that needs to be strengthened. This is where we count on the regional commissions because you advise national governments on VNRs. We don't engage with governments so much on VNRs. You work with them closely. You work with the ministries. You advise them on the VNRs. You advise the country teams, and I think that connection, if we can build together, would be absolutely phenomenal. We think that VLRs, one pilot is okay, 2 is great, but ultimately to go to scale, you need a collection of VLRs at the national level to be systematically inputting into the voluntary national reviews. 1 off, 2 off is great to test it out, but it's not good enough. We don't have time, we need speed, we need scale, and that's why national movements are very important. And I'm looking at Portugal, where such a national movement is really taking shape as we speak now. But we need to go beyond. We really, again, reinforcing the message that in and of itself, a VLR connected to a VNR is okay, but not our ultimate goal. Ultimately, the goal is stronger multi-level governance, it's stronger policy coherence, it's stronger strategic alignment, it's stronger visioning, it's more impactful action by all levels of government. That is what we're looking for if we are to achieve the SDGs by 2030, and we're really at a crunch moment now. So this is an important moment. The regional forum this year, therefore, is super significant in this super year. And thank you for convening us. Thank you for bringing us together. And thank you all for your leadership in this movement on SDG organizations. Thanks very much. Back to you, Vinay.
Thank you so much, Shipra. We're looking forward to continue in-depth discussion that was planned now. So it's my pleasure to give floor to UCLG. So Sarah Höflich, Director of Learning of the Global Secretariat of UCLG, is here representing UCLG as a partner to this project.
Thank you very much, Gulnara. And first, thank you also personally, because you have been managing and preparing this meeting very, very well with a lot of detail. So we feel finally we meet the partners. Most of you, we have already been meeting online. So thank you very much. And it shows that we are not here to just convene, but we are part of a process. And the project, as you say, is an opportunity. And I think also Martino is managing it very well to always connect it to all the possibilities we have, which are very many in this very special year for the United Nations and for us, that we believe in the SDG localization and in SDGs like the SDG 11. So maybe for just to remind, UCLG, we stand United Cities and Local Governments. We are a movement, as to say, 100 years old movement, and always representing local governments, the local government sphere. We are not necessarily only a bottom-up movement, because we are a movement of decision makers. We are a movement of governments. We're just not in the United Nations, but it goes there. No, I think the words of Shipra's sound very much also along our ambitions. And maybe just to remind, we are based in Barcelona, but there's also only the World Secretariat, and maybe you have met our Secretary General in Media Science, but we also have regional offices and regional sections. So here for UNECE and the constituency we see here, the European CMR and the Eurasia Secretariat are very informed on all what we are doing, and we also hope that all this will be helping to build the system of bridges which we need to go fast and to go coherent to this future. Maybe on the localization, I think it's very clear that from our view, the localization as Shipra says, we have been really lobbying for this, advocating for this term, and since the SDG were formulated, and now we see that the sounding is great because many countries, nations, stakeholders, also private sector, are surprised on the power local government and regional government bring to this agenda. And I think here the point on the data discussion, that is a very important element, because the SDG, although we can see maybe the glass half empty and say, well, we have not enough data, we can also say the SDG have helped to structure the cities, the local governments, the regional government, what they are doing. And now it's not big book you have to read to understand Madrid. You can click on an SDG and then you will find what they are doing. So of course, this allows us to think about government in a very different way, and that local government is in this data reflection around the indicators is important. And we have, of course, motivated many of our members that they are not afraid that they are the last one in data, because in the first part, and I think that's important also in all the regions, we have big inequalities, and not only inequalities of development indicators, but inequality on decentralization, on competences of local government, on fiscal decentralization, and of course on the difference between the big and the small municipalities. And these inequalities, the SDG allow that everybody say, this is my starting point, and from here, a city like Johannesburg has a starting point at Ekis and progress. And maybe a village here in Swiss has also a starting point and does not progress. For example, on housing or on critical elements, where we know that the municipal policy are so critical. So this for us is an other way of coming everybody to the table as equal, because I come with my starting point and not because I have this or that GIP or whatever measurement. So for us, and I'm the director of UCLG Learning, so we see, we have an online course, for example, since 4 years. We always join municipalities in their own processes. And the VLR, when municipalities small, many small, or practitioners, when they start to understand localizing, they all like the VLR as a way to organize their own knowledge, to go through the knowledge they have in the different departments, structure it, cluster it, and show where they are. And but of course, the VLR, as we know, it is not a report, only a visibility way to the United Nations and to be seen and to be part, but it is an accelerator. So this in the practice means I will have to measure myself. So who do I involve in which kind of indicators? And then, of course, automatically, if I put it on the operational side, and I think we will hear from Nicholas later on, then, of course, I do not have that very big window with indicators to all and every target, but I have it along my priorities. And this is shaping the local policy making and local policy makers for the next decade. Because even if we are maybe focusing on certain targets, and I'm very, very interested to hear from your region, from your experience, which targets would this be? We have the depth that is not only a party issue, it is not only an individual leadership issue, it is usually a consultancy processes with local, with civil society, with private sector, with the important stakeholders. So we see that it was actually the VLR, I think, is maybe more effective than we ourselves expected in this way. And just to close on that movement part and the political value of VLR, we see that the VLR are very important, but if you have, as Shipra says, in the end, we need to be part of the VNR. Mm-hmm. So the VNR is what also states need to commit more deep, and we have to fight for this. So this means that we need to convince the nations, and this will only be possible if several cities look to this together, and that's why we have also another reporting methodology, which we call the VSR. So this is voluntary subnational review, and here our associations of local governments do this job because this is also their task, and of course this is also innovating their advocacy streams between local and national levels. So I think we are really in an important historical moment where all this advocacy is now more comparable, again, more possible at the same table. And if this happens inside UN conferences, for us it is very, very sounding. So we are very happy to be here and look forward to hear from you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sarah. I think we got a lot of operational stuff for the further discussion. My pleasure to give floor to Jürgen Kafke, who is a Senior Program Management Officer at Capacity Building Department at DESA. He is joining online, and I see Jürgen on my screen. I think we need probably some technical assistance in order to get him spotlight on the larger screen, because I don't think this is connected somehow. But anyway, Jürgen, we hear you. So
Okay.
go ahead.
All right. Thank you, Gulnara. You can hear me?
Yes, we hear you.
All right. Thank you.
On the big screen.
Okay, great. Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here, and thank you and the colleagues in ECE to have organized that. I was actually able to join some of the sessions yesterday on the SDG 11 roundtable. That was very interesting also to see and hear some of the views from local governments. As you know, DESA, the Department of Economic and Social Affairs, is organizing the HLPF in July, and now all the 5 regional commissions, as preparatory step, are organizing the regional forums to give a regional perspective, and we are listening in, trying to participate remotely, as now with technology that's much easier than always traveling. Like today, or actually yesterday, the Asia Pacific region just concluded their workshop with the time difference. It just concluded on, I think it's today, actually, but we're listening in yesterday. Now for DESA's perspective, we have been more looking at the VNRs, and now we are looking really at the linkages VNR and VLRs, and what Shipra mentioned also, it needs to be more systematic, but we hope to have a game changer in development, that we get a more systematic approach on VSR and VLRs to advance the SDGs. I mean, VLR, VSRs and VNRs all have the SDGs as a benchmark. We have the same common methodology. It involves how do we involve all the stakeholders, partners towards better results. Now it's the HLPF. This year we expect 42 VNRs to be presented. First time also the European Union. We are looking forward at the, let's say, not member state level, but multiple governments working together. And in total, I think we have 14 VNRs from ECE member states and the EU coming forward. Many of these for the second time. Now for the second generation of VNRs, many of us want to go further. We want to deepen analysis and showcase more impacts on what has happened from the first to the second VNRs. Improving localization is a very important point that comes across stronger and stronger. More stakeholder engagement, as well as involving the private sector to find solutions. And last but not least, the use of science and data. And today, that's why I know we are already 5-10 minutes behind schedule, so I try to be short. I'm looking forward to see how we can use the VNRs and VLRs to define localization policies that really change and accelerate the SDGs. So for us, it's not just the self-interest of individual municipalities, but for the country or on the national level in total, where do we move forward? What kind of game changers we can identify? And data is one of the biggest challenges in this area. I mean, sometimes, as you know, data is available, but not available in the right format, not available in your own institution, but in a different institution, and data sharing faces technical challenges, legal challenges. So I'm really looking forward to hear from Madrid's and the other examples what we have here. So I want to be short and would like to just close with a word from our Secretary General. He said we need new resolve and ways of working together that are suited to the challenges we face and the diverse landscape of actors that have the capacity to contribute to solutions. Thank you, and I'm looking forward for the discussions.
Thank you so much, Jürgen, on behalf of DESA. Really appreciate of getting so early in the morning because we understand you are in New York, so it's still very early for you. So with this, we are closing the opening remarks and moving into the information about the project. So my pleasure to give floor to Martino Miraglia, who is a project coordinator of the project. If you're happy with that. Yes. Again, use the opportunity, Martino. Thank you very much for the cooperation and looking forward to working together.
Thanks a lot, Gulnara, and thank you, everyone. I will be very short because I think we have a long list of speakers. First and foremost, thanks to the representatives from the pilot countries that are here today. Colleagues are also connected online, but it's a pleasure. So thanks for being here, but also to the partners from Switzerland, Madrid, that are joining to this panel. To conclude the round of greetings, thanks to UNECE and DESA and UCLG, and not only to those that are sitting here, but also those behind the scene, Telman, Felix, Anya, Melanie, Veronica, and the UN Habitat colleagues that are connected online because it's a joint effort from two teams that have put this together. I will walk you through very quickly what we aim to achieve with this project, and then just report the following to Spiro for more detailed information. So is just to have a quick overview of where do we stand with regards to the global movement of VLRs in number. Maybe if we can go to the second slide. We are reaching now. I mean, it's the potential of VLRs. Of course, coming from the large numbers as we started with 30 few when we developed the first VLR guidelines in 2021, and we are now at 200 from 168 regional governments. Some of those are already at the third edition of a voluntary local review. The ECE region is leading the development of VLRs, but you know, the potential of the VLRs is not only in numbers, but it's really about their acceleration for SDG localization. And next slides, please. So today this is more or less a try to summarizing what actually VLRs. How do we consider VLRs an accelerator of SDGs? What does this mean? The different dimensions that really it can allow to accelerate at the local, but also at the national level. Today, as a VNR Studio, we are focusing on the issue of data, which is, of course, if you have been working on voluntary reviews, you have seen how the unprecedented push really towards the creation, development, and collection and analysis of data at the city level. More cooperation with the National Statistical Office. It's really a revolution in the thinking around the collection and analysis of data against the SDGs. It has fostered across the departmental cooperation at the city or regional level, sharing information across departments. And it has inspired, at least within the UN system, also the development of the global monitoring framework that we'll have to hear the chance to hear also from the colleagues of Madrid, which is has been approved or endorsed by the Statistical Commission as the UN framework to monitor urban development and the urban dimension of the SDGs. The other dimension that we are going to see a bit more into detail today is the multi-level governance one. And this is a key component of the project, as we are convinced that what is happening at the local level can overall reinforce the capacities and the processes happening at the national and vice versa. Local governments cannot achieve sustainability alone. And the connection between local and national level, the healthy connection between VLRs and VNRs has been really another time a push towards more policy coherence and an overall enhancement of national capacities for sustainable development. Next one, please. So I will skip through these slides just to make sure that we understand that from UN Habitat, but also from all the partners that are involved here, the idea is not to work on VLRs per se. VLRs are part of a component of a process that is much larger. It's an entry point to support long-term SDG accreditation processes. And as part of UN Habitat, we have the chance to have a larger program, which is called SDGs, that really accompanies cities from the data development up to the development of projects. And we hope to connect what is happening at the city level, at the country level, to the larger structure of the local 2030 vision as the UN-wide initiative on realizing the SDGs. 2 slides forward, please. I'll do it quickly. Yes. Just to get into the nitty-gritty of the project, quickly, a couple of slides. You've seen partners, Habitat, EC, DESA, UCLG. UN Habitat is leading, but this is a very clear partnership as we count on the experience of EC in the region and on the leadership of UCLG and DESA at the global level. But specifically, we count on the work from our pilot countries because the VLR is just a starting point, and you are doing already some great work to build upon. Next one, please. What is going to happen next, actually, in our project? Because what the objective is pretty clear. We'll soon kickstart the development of the VLR. I've just summarized the key processes and steps that we are going to look into. The consolidation of the local teams, the starting of the collection and analysis of data as the backbone of the development of the VLR, which we are going to combine with a process of stakeholders consultation to gather some information, but also to raise ownership and information around the VLR itself. Of course, the drafting, because someone has to write. And with the idea of launching hopefully the finalized projects and the finalized reports by maximum mid next year, also to inform some of the key events that we are going to have, such as the regional forums, but also the World Economic Forum that will happen in the second half of the year. Next one, please. Just quickly going through what actually Sarah was mentioning. A new version of the learning module on territorial planning that will help us training local and national representatives, combined with some online resources, including the online course that EC is preparing on voluntary local reviews. Finally, last slide would be about the way ahead, the super year that we have, just to visualize a bit of some of the milestones. We start after the EC forum, we will see hopefully each other in the lobby for the UN Habitat Assembly. Quick reminder to see that the side events applications are going to end on the close on 11th of April. So if anyone is interested, please feel free. Nairobi is nice. Beyond being a cool event. High-level political forum, I'm not reading through, you will have the slides, but with many different opportunities, which will lead us to the big appointment of September with the SDG Summit and to the October events, including the Forum of Mayors that Paula was actually mentioning. Of course, there are trillions of other events, national and locals in between all of this, but this is just for us to have a large overview of the key processes ahead. And as you can see on the top right, the VNR-VLR Studios are a key component of this. We are going to organize more at the regional level, also with other commissions, and at the global with UN DESA.
Great. Thank you so much, Martino, for explaining the project and the process. Now I will be giving floor to Spiro Morales, who is head of Zofna's program at Harvard University in the USA. Spiro, you were a very active participant through our University of Geneva Center of Excellence. Before, we're trying to establish Center of Excellence in the US as well. But so floor is with you.
Thank you, Gulnara. Thank you all. And I also feel in a very familiar environment, Cipra. I was thinking, what can I add to what Martino said, to what all the introductions were? So let me say that whatever it has been said, it's like I participate, I fully agree. But let me say a few more things and more, I would say, more personal things. First of all, I would like to say that what is happening, we did not hear about the United States. The US is quite active in VNRs, and I'm very happy to have Paul from the State Department with us and 5 students from the University of California here with us. And I expect that the VLRs are going to be even more important in the US, but although they are very important, we learn from them. The next thing I would like to say is that the important thing here is that we already have built a community. And what we're doing, the VLR-VLR Studio, in my opinion, it is an educational tool. It's not a tool to measure things, it's an educational tool. And when I see actually friends from like Miriam or Baghdad, that we have common goal, and the common goal is not to collect data. The common goal is to be sustainable. And when we have, as Miriam was telling me yesterday again, in Bishkek, she reminded me, we have 49 informal settlements. How do we collect data from the informal settlement? Because when we're talking about quality of life that was mentioned earlier by Cipra, in the US these days, we talk a lot about equity and inclusion. How can we have a sustainable Kyrgyzstan, a sustainable Bishkek, if we cannot include the 49 informal settlements? Only in Bishkek, we're not talking about the other cities. So having said all these things, I would like to emphasize that the important thing here is to be sustainable, to use VLRs and VNRs as an educational tool, to be able to make decisions that are supported by data. But in any case, sometimes we may not be able to get the data we need. And in that case, data may become more subjective discussions with people. We try to engage the private sector, as was mentioned earlier, but more important, we have to remember that we have to be sustainable. And we cannot be sustainable at the national level alone, because otherwise it's like we say top down. This does not work. It has to be bottom up. And bottom up, the cities is a good place to start. And then we have to go to the neighborhoods. We have to start looking how the cities work. And it's very important to have on the same table Madrid and Nice and the other cities that we have together. And the important thing is to exchange information and be humble and be facilitators and not teach anybody. We don't know how to do things. We need to facilitate things. And this is what we're discussing with my colleagues at the University of Geneva. And also, please do, and we should do, focus on the low-hanging fruit. Get the data that we can easily get. Get the data that are not expensive to get. And follow the American example, which is post the information on the web. I would welcome all the cities to create websites and mention what they're doing and ask the input of their citizens. And of course, we know there's a big social divide, but at least this is something that we can do. So data is not only to collect, but has to be reciprocal. We have to give data as well. And I'm pretty sure that we can do all these things. So, bottom line, the framework is to be sustainable. VLRs, VNRs are a great tool. More important is this community that we build here. Thank you.
Spiro, thank you for taking over the facilitation from Gulnara. Touching upon very important issues, there is no one behind how we can create a city that is sustainable if we don't have data, if we don't have policy initiatives, and absolutely sharing the call for more transparency, sharing of data, and making this whole process collaborative with our local communities. But I will pass immediately the floor to Alexandre from the University of Geneva for moderating the first of panel.
Thank you very much, Martino, and my side. Extend our gratitude to UNECE to have given us the floor, and University of Geneva and the Center of Excellence are very happy to contribute to this community building around VLRs and VNRs. Within this session of the discussion, really share our experiences from Switzerland, from the national scale. You mentioned cities and neighborhoods, but as we discussed it, the national scale is extremely important. So is the local scale. But not only the big cities. And we have realized that some of mid-sized cities and smaller towns have been facing some challenges in terms of assessment and reporting, and need to think out of the box. And I have the pleasure of giving the floor to Ms. Marica Bordoni, Head of Sustainability and Social Cohesion at the city of Castel San Pietro in Switzerland. And after that, we'll pass on to the words to the national scale. Marika, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I hope you can hear me well.
Yes.
Good afternoon. I'm really pleased to be here today together with my colleague Viola to give you a very brief presentation of the sustainability project called Castello Sostenibile, which we have been running for the last 18 months in the small town of Castel San Pietro in Ticino with a population of 2,500 persons. Next. We had this quite confused starting situation. The question we raised was, is sustainable development something new for Castel San Pietro? I would say not at all. In fact, over the last years, a huge number of initiatives in all three dimensions of the sustainability have been organized in the town. We had measures for sustainable mobility, we had incentives for the exploitation of renewable energy, we had implementation of rainwater recovery systems, we had awareness raising initiatives like information evening for citizens on renewable heat, we had green days, we had organization of green days, we had services for families and children. So lots of initiatives, but very chaotic, exactly like this slide. So very chaotic, very confused, and just waiting to be reorganized. So my first takeaway today for you is having found this fertile ground in sustainability was really crucial to the success of our project, Castello Sostenibile. Next. We therefore needed to organize all the different measures. And first of all, we bring the municipality to agree on a recognized framework. And the framework, of course, we chose was the Agenda 2030, and this was chosen by the municipality in November 2021. Why did we decide for this Agenda 2030? Of course, because it was chosen at federal level and then at cantonal level. And what was the advantage of having a clear framework adopted at municipal level, and why it was important to have this project Castello Sostenibile? Of course, first of all, to commit the municipality with a strategic document, a long-term vision. So you know that governance changes, municipality change. We wanted to have it on the long term. Also to concretely measure the impacts of policy choices and the result of efforts made. And also, of course, to adapt in time to the current trend in Canton Ticino, because we have the cantonal government, which is working to a project where they will invite or oblige all municipalities to prepare a sustainability report. And finally, of course, we started this project to create dialogue and communication, because a good governance of a municipality starts with the involvement of all the different stakeholders we have in the city. So this is the second takeaway. So participating governance. We structured our project really with the involvement of a lot of stakeholders. Next. So what is the concrete contents of the project, of this project Castello Sostenibile? We structured it with 3 sub-projects on 3 different levels. So energy, environment, and land use. But with a sort of fil rouge connecting them. And the fil rouge was the sustainability. So the first sub-project was carrying out all those activities necessary to obtain the Energy City certification, which we obtained in November 2022. You see it, the picture. And it was exactly 1 year after starting the project. And you all certainly know that this quality level is awarded by an independent national commission and is given to municipalities distinguishing themselves for an above average energy and climate policy. The second pillar, or the second sub-project, was the definition of KPIs and drafting of a sustainability report focusing on the environmental dimension. Viola will guide you through this later on, but why did we only focus on environment when sustainability also includes economic and social dimension? Because this was a pilot project and we didn't want to have too much to work on. So we focused in the first phase on the environmental dimension, which could also take advantage of the synergies with the Energy City certification. And the third sub-project was that according to the guidelines and working method adopted by the Ticino government in 2018, all municipalities are called upon the update of the settlement development policy of their master plan. And this project is running now. So in this project, there was a specific thematic group on sustainable development. And we were asked to bring our needs and intervention needed in the master plan of the town. So my third takeaway here is that sustainability currently pervades different projects and activities of a municipality, and it is very important to identify synergies between them. Otherwise, we will be inefficient. And my last slide, finally, is the organization of the project, how we organized it. So we organized it in a very standard way, with the sponsor being the municipality, with the involvement of the commissions, so the Environmental Commission and the Commission of the Master Plan. We had a project steering, guiding all activities, and I was present in this steering with 3 colleagues. We had a project management team reporting regularly to the steering and giving the possibility to make intervention whenever necessary. And then we had 5 major working groups. The first one on the left-hand side is the extraction of data, which was responsible to collect all the data available in the administration and bring them in a useful way, so that the second group, the one where we had Viola Ferdani working, was the one defining the KPIs and the measures to make improvement in the KPIs. And hiring Viola in this group just after her Master in Innovation and Sustainability at the University of Geneva was, of course, very motivating for the project. She brought her scientific knowledge and this very positive energy, which is always needed in the projects. And in addition, to give the opportunity to a student to participate to such a project was, of course, a reflection of implementing social sustainability in our administration. And then the last two groups were the one dedicated to the work for the label Cité de l'Énergie, and the other one, the one for the master plan. And finally, but of course not less important, was the support we needed and how we ensured quality of the work. We had this senior consultant in working in the certification of the Cité de l'Énergie. We had expert and landscape architect working with us for the master plan. And last, we had the crucial involvement of the scientific community. Professor Ediasi and Professor Tarantino supervised our project and validated the methodology of assessment and also innovate in terms of coming up with the right KPI. So this is my last takeaway. You need a clear organization, strong commitment, valid scientific support, a motivator like Viola, and of course the instruments from Canton and the Confederation. So Viola, the floor is yours.
Okay, can you hear me well?
Yes, we can hear.
Okay, perfect. I just open, okay, full screen. Okay, so thank you very much. To conclude the presentation, I will be very brief. I will give you some insight on the organization behind the sustainability report, on which I worked for over 1 year. With all the stakeholders, I will present you in details later. So one of the key principles of such works and that we try to implement is the stakeholder engagement, an approach aimed at involving different interest groups through the whole process to secure a greater representative overview. Although we did not directly engage all the stakeholders that were previously mentioned, we could still involve some main groups such as the town council, for sure, mainly for the political orientation, then the administration of Castel San Pietro to retrieve inner data and to reconstruct the history and measures implemented by the municipality over the past 10 years. Then the two working groups as representatives of the civil society that were mentioned before, so the Environmental Commission and the Sustainable Development Group, who had the important role of validating the indicators. Another group that had been strongly stressed in all senses, especially for data and sometimes their interpretation, are the experts of the cantonal and federal departments, and in some cases, other non-governmental experts, such as regional environmental associations. As previously said by Marika Codoni, the academia has also played a fundamental role in guiding the municipality towards the completion of the report. And finally, the comparison with other Swiss municipalities, in particular those who had already performed this reporting exercise, has been crucial to define the initial setup of the work based on their experience. So how was the work actually done and what was the method behind it? Compared to the corporate world, where reporting has become a common practice and there are predefined standards such as the GRI, for the public bodies, there is instead a universal recognized model. In Switzerland, as we will see later with the colleagues from the Federal Statistical Office, there is one framework that has been conceived for cities and municipalities to facilitate dialogue and comparison between them. That is the Cercle Indicateur. This framework, however, has been conceived for medium-sized municipalities with over 6,000 inhabitants. And as we heard before, Castel San Pietro doesn't have these inhabitants. Therefore, an important part of this work has been to critically analyze the framework itself, in particular by redefining the indicators, as some of them were inapplicable and made no sense for the reality of Castel San Pietro, or simply because in some cases data was not available. As a result, further measurement models had been taken into consideration, such as, for instance, the indicators of the Cité de l'Énergie that we mentioned before, the indicators of the Federal Office of the Environment, and the indicators of the Eurostat. At the end of this process, which was anything but linear, we ended up with a set of 27 indicators that you can see on the right slide, which were selected to be clear, scientifically relevant, and most importantly, influenceable by the municipality. So to conclude, what are next steps? The sustainability report represents just the starting point towards sustainability. From now on, the Town Council of Castel San Pietro has a tool at its disposal, not just for communication, but a planning tool thanks to which it will be possible to monitor its performance and define measures based on it. The municipality will clearly have to evaluate the measures that resulted from the analysis and will have to plan their introduction within the annual municipalities reporting. Additionally, one of the hard jobs will be to match the internal expert within the municipality with assessment needs to support further indicators, such as the one related to the social and economic dimension to complete the sustainability report according to recognized standards such as the GRI. Finally, the Town Council will have to communicate more on good practices while continuing to be inspired by those of others. And today's participation at this forum is a clear demonstration of it. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Viola, and thank you, Marika. Both you have drawn a very interesting picture of how, from the size of smaller size of Castel San Pietro, you managed to move from a chaotic start and come up with your own way of creating those synergies based on ongoing exchanges with different levels, including the subnational. Sherpa was mentioning the VSRs, and towards that community that Spiro was mentioning earlier on, to build up that community. But this is, again, going back to what Sherpa was saying, creating strong vision and strategic alignment is needed, and therefore the national scale matters, the national level of assessment and reporting, and what of some of the methods and methodologies have been used. And therefore, I want to give the floor to you, Anne. Mrs. Anne Bosch is the co-leader of the multi-topic monitoring group, the former project manager at the Centre d'Indicateur, which is a methodology that's being used in Switzerland. The floor is yours.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I'm sharing right now the presentation. It's a bit slow. Okay. Do you see the slides?
Yes.
And do you hear me properly?
Yes, we do.
Okay, all fine. So hello, everyone. So I'm Anne Busch from the FSO, the Federal Statistical Office of Switzerland, and I will speak about sustainability indicators at the city and cantonal level and at the national level in Switzerland. And thank you, Viola, for the small advertising on Cercle Indicateur before. But I will begin with some homemade drawing to share some general thoughts on indicators, which, in my opinion, are a specific kind of evidence that can be useful, especially for normative concepts such as sustainable development. Indicators in general and sustainability indicators more specifically are tools that can be developed for many different purposes. And this is what I intend to show with this drawing, with a more or less direct connection with policy and decision making. And the closer the link to decision making, the more instrumental or direct use for taking decisions is expected. This is, for example, this words on the right side, fix undesired developments. And this kind of direct instrumental use is expected usually for indicators that have been developed for controlling purposes or for the monitoring of the implementation of the measures of an action plan. But there are also other types of indicators, like those that we are actually operating at the FSO, both at the cantonal municipal level and at the national level, sustainability indicators. And these indicators that we have at the FSO rather have been designed for setting the scene, to provide long-term observation in order to reveal changes and trends. And there is no pretense of providing a causal analysis of the impact of specific policies. We rather observe general outcomes of many policies that are intertwined, also with external context factors such as, let's say, wars, unfortunately, natural disasters, general economic recessions, and so on. So we are really rather at this level. However, in both cases, whatever the purpose of sustainability indicators are, it is, in our opinion, very important to be aware that they are the result of a normative process, and it's context specific. We assume that it is actually not possible to just measure or just collect data as it's written on the top of the drawing, but we rather extract what is considered to be the most important information based on the contexts in which these indicators are set up. And this context involves also taking into account the geographical scale and the stakeholders that are involved. Yeah. So this is basically what I wanted to share. And also it is, in our opinion, very important to rely on a conceptual framework to be transparent about the choices we made due to the fact that it is a normative process. And I will come back to this later. But first, some words on, sorry, is it slow or? Okay, some words on sustainability indicators for cantons and cities, which are headlined under the word cercle indicateur, and then I will briefly mention also the sustainability indicators at the national level. So the cercle indicateur has been set up in the Swiss context, which, as many of you may know, is a federal organized country, which means that the cantons have a lot of decisional and autonomy, decisional power, and and a lot of autonomy. And the organization of Cercle Indicateur reflects actually this federal organization. The Federal Office for Spatial Development, the ARE that you see on the top, is in charge of sustainable development at the federal level in general, and is also has their overall project responsibility for Cercle Indicateur. And the FSO, which I'm representing, is in charge of the scientific secretariat. So we basically operate the indicator system, and we make data updates together with cantons and cities. And it is up to the cantons and cities to participate or not in the project on a voluntary basis, and involving a financial contribution from all three levels of the state, from the federal offices, from the cantons, and from the cities. And as Viola mentioned before, it is indeed aimed at cities and not at all municipalities for various reasons. One is data availability, which is more and more difficult the more you go in small populated municipalities, and also because issues at the city level relating to sustainability are not necessarily the same as the ones for smaller municipalities. So, which is why we restrict approximately to municipalities that have at least 6,000 inhabitants, more or less, and that have an urban character. So, all these cantons and cities and federal offices form the responsible body, and we also have an advisor, a strategic advisory board constituted of representatives from cantons and cities within this responsible body that advise the FSO and the RA on strategic issues. And we also have ad hoc working groups that are set up, for example, to revise a specific indicator or to make a specific conceptual development. So basically, it's so to say, a unique, in our modest national scale, a unique institution, or one of the only institutions in Switzerland gathering all three levels of government. There are some others, but there are not many. And we, for example, take advantage of large coffee breaks and large lunch breaks when we have the 2 yearly meetings, so that the participants can actually exchange not only on the indicators, but mostly on sustainability related policies among all these levels. Now some words about the indicator system itself. So I will not make a detailed presentation of the conceptual framework from Cercle Indicateur, but basically it revolves around 10 topics that you can see on the left part of the slide. And for each topic, we defined several or one or several indicators, which make it altogether around 30 indicators. We have two sets, one set of indicators for the cities, so around 30 indicators for the cities and around 30 indicators for the cantons. Some indicators are defined exactly the same way and some differ in order to take into account data availability and specific issues that are not the same depending on the geographical scale. And then you can see on the right part of the slide an example of one indicator, which is anchored in the energy and climate topic, which is the renewable electricity indicator for cities, where you can see that we actually have data for all participating cities, the gray curves, and we also present the participants' cities average. And it is very important here to mention that the indicators have not for sure be chosen by chance. They are very conceptually anchored in this conceptual framework that is structured around these 10 topics. So each topic is described in a very detailed manner, and this description has been worked all together with all the participating cantons and cities based on propositions by the RA and the FSO. And this is mainly for resource reasons that we work like this. And each specific indicator has also a specific text which is called significance of the indicators, which describe why it has been chosen to illustrate this specific topic and more generally sustainability. Now a comparison between Cercle Indicateur and MONET 2030, which is the national level sustainability indicator system. So here you can see it's really two different systems, but they have a common ground, and the main common ground is the fact that both are based on a conceptual framework. For Cercle Indicateur, it is these 10 topics. For MONET 2030, as you can imagine from the name, it is now the SDGs and the targets translated in the Swiss context that are the main structure for the MONET 2030 indicators. And so they are kind of similar in how they are constructed. They are similar in the fact that also for MONET, the main stakeholders, institutional public stakeholders have been involved in the creation of the indicator system and are continuously involved in major aspects of the indicator system. But the stakeholders are different. For MONET, it's only the federal level, so different ministries, different federal offices are involved. Whereas for Cercle Indicateur, we have the ARE, so the Federal Office for Spatial Development, we have FSO, and otherwise the participating cantons and cities. So the two projects actually have different histories, different contexts of creation, and different indicators, whereby some indicators are similar or identical, but they are not published exactly jointly. And this is, yeah, the main take-home messages, I would say, from both indicator systems are the fact that they are based on a conceptual framework, the fact that the main stakeholders, at least the public institutional stakeholders, have been involved and are kept involved for revisions of the systems, for revisions of indicators. And in both cases, we've set up very early in the process clear rules and responsibilities to tell which entity is entitled to develop and say what on the indicator system, because you can imagine that it can very easily become a jungle, no? When it comes to such a normative concept such as sustainable development. So we really recommend to take these three aspects into consideration if someone is to build a sustainability indicator system. And finally, some general experiences that we made with Cercle Indicateur that may also be relevant for VLRs. So it's a shared project between the three levels of the state, as I mentioned. And in our case, the national level is a driver, as you have seen. So the RA and the FSO are drivers in this, but also in the sense that we know that it's important to coordinate, to provide resources, but at the same time, we really want to let enough decision power and freedom to the cantonal and local entities, so that really it's all three levels are equally the owners of the Cercle Indicateur projects. And also we encourage the cities and the cantons that are part of Cercle Indicateur to develop their own complements to Cercle Indicateur, to take into account local specificities. And in this respect, I would say that Castel San Pietro, even though too small to be part of Cercle Indicateur, is very exemplary in having developed this indicator system and all the related policy related initiative. And finally, I would say that in the case of this Cercle Indicateur, which is a common indicator system at the national level, co-funding and to some extent human resources sharing is extremely important. There is no one that is exclusively the producer or the consumer of the information. Everyone actually shares the responsibility over the content. And of course, I assume this may have an influence on whether the indicators are actually used. If you are only a consumer, you might just get to know that the indicators are there, but not do anything more with that. When you are co-responsible over the content and co-responsible over collecting the data, actually, it's another story, and it might enhance actual use for taking decisions, even though it is a general monitoring indicator system. So I'm done. I hope I haven't taken too much time. Thank you for your attention, and I would be happy to discuss some issues with you if we have enough time.
Thank you very much, Anne, and sharing with us. And obviously, we are running rather out of time for our session. We'll leave the question and answer for the later part of this discussion. But you bringing the importance of coordination and leadership at the national level is key to address these different levels of assessment at the national, Shirpa mentioned the sub-national, as well as the local levels, and also sharing with us the question, and this is a segue to your part that is following by Martino on the question of data. The interoperability and translation of some of these indicators are key, and you illustrate that with Cercle Indicateur and Money 2030 that this is a key element that we need to consider and factor in. Thank you very much both to Castel San Pietro and to you at Federal Statistical Office in Neuchâtel. Thank you very much, and I'll give the floor to you, Maxi.
Thanks a lot, colleagues. Thanks a lot, Alexandre, and to the colleagues of San Pietro and Anna. I love the Swiss knife. Everyone was very clear, I guess. Amazing. But without taking more time, I think that we are now having showing a bit of the experience from the city of Madrid, bringing us with a nice transition from this discussion more oriented to also within data and towards what we are going to hear more from the colleagues from the Eastern European and Central Asian countries afterwards. Nicholas, I don't think that I need to introduce you much. You have been yesterday sharing also your experience during the panel. Successful VLR experience, but I guess with many challenges. So over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Martino. First, I would like to greet and thank everyone. I mean, UNECE, UN Habitat, UCLG, and I think yesterday we were discussing in the reception, and the feeling was extremely positive because we start to feel that the dialogue between the local authorities, member states, international organization, now it's just kind of normal. Before it was kind of innovative, hardcore kind of dynamic. Meanwhile, now it's no, just smoothly flowing. And I think that this kind of feeling is a great indicator. Okay, so actually, I will start from what you said, Martino, before, that actually the VLR is just one moment, or let's say one milestone of a process that is much more complex. And this is really fundamental for us. And as Shipra said, the value of the VLR, I mean, I totally agree. We are not grasping the real meaning, the real impact that we are having in the deep part of the institutional processes, and we maybe see the immediate, let's say, results, but I think we are working much more. And so, I mean, this is kind of perception we are having by doing it. And this is, I would say, the thing that give us more, let's say, faith in a 2030 agenda we'll see in September, where there are a lot of criticism because it's just around the corner of the 2030s, difficult to meet this objective, etc. But at the same time, this VLR movement that no one was expecting at the beginning in 2015 is just bringing new life, demonstrating how really local governments can help to revitalize the multilateral system. So yes, I mean, think positive considerations, in this. Okay, so for us, VLR again, it's been a milestone, and also, let's say, an opportunity to improve our work back home first, and of course, in the relation with our national authorities and European and global. So on one end, of course, the starting point is that we have the 2030 agenda that give us a common language and kind of common metrics also. At the same time, is member state, of course, the type of agenda. So we invented this VLR because we felt that we had something to propose and to demonstrate. And in this sense, we see kind of two dynamics. Horizontal one, so the VLR are extremely useful for us to work together with our peers. But there is also, and here maybe we'll focus on this dynamic of the vertical dynamic that is actually the multi-level dimension that you were mentioning, that for us also is the most important. And in this sense, I would say that the benefit of the VLR process, at least in Madrid, are more domestic than global, if you want. In the sense that, of course, we have, and after we talk about let's say, the local dimension in municipality, but it really helps us to create argument. That's what we create together with our constituency, UCLG, Global Task Force, etc., on the role of local and regional authorities in the multilateral system, etc., or at European level in our case, but especially with our central government, demonstrating how it's essential for them in order to reach their global, but also European, now we are seeing with the recovery plans, etc., objectives, and not just the Polish objective, but also Spanish objectives, etc., without counting with local. And this is really an extremely good benefit. So even if we speak the language apparently of the global world, so the 2030 agenda, in reality, the benefit it's first of all in our national context. So these two dynamics, the horizontal and the vertical. At the core of our advocacy, global, European, national, there is actually evidence. Because the real argument, the narrative is powerful, fine. But if we do not have a concrete evidence, the narrative actually will just disappear. So our arguments are just based on evidence. That's what we try to do in Madrid. And for this, of course, you have to start in a context of a lot of constraints, because you cannot invent a new solution out of scratch, because you have to do with the elements you have. So in reality, you need more innovation, because it's much more complicated to find solution with so many constraints than rather inventing a new framework. It's much easier. So it has been extremely challenging, but we saw that this process would have a benefit just if we were going to the difficult path. The difficult path is, of course, very relative, as Shiva was saying. I mean, in Madrid, we have a lot of data. Fortunately, even London, let's say, but for example, in London, in order to get to the traffic light data, you have to pay a private company. Madrid, we own the traffic light data, so it's even easier. So it's super, in this sense, it's very easy. but there are other, let's say, institutional workflow, etc. So starting from the global level, the first thing was actually, okay, there are so many interesting frameworks for monitoring, but there are too many. And for us as a city, it's very complicated. So should I use this one, the other one? So that's why, I mean, thanks to the leadership of UN Habitat, that actually was able, with the UN Statistical Commission, with all the other agencies, also with the World Bank, etc. I mean, to start to create a consistent framework for monitoring the SDGs, that is the Global Urban Monitoring Framework, that on one end, build up on the basis of the previous existing frameworks, and plus, and this is actually from plus localizing it at the right scale, so the city scale. So that's extremely important for us. So it solves a little bit the issue of the, let's say, the appropriateness of targets and indicators of the 2030 agenda for the local level. But then there is another, the Global Urban Monitoring Framework was able also to add the other key dimension, that is the dimension of comparability, thanks to an harmonized definition of urban areas. Because otherwise we compare pears and apples with the, and it doesn't make any sense for us in this horizontal dynamic I was mentioning. So this has been a work of, again, led by Habitat, World Bank, European Union, etc., starting the new urban agenda. And step by step, we arrive in 2023, where the UN Statistical Commission actually approved the urban monitoring framework, applied to the definition, harmonized definition of city that was endorsed a few years ago. So this is actually, again, for us, the reflection of the fact that from our small local dimension, we can support global processes and also put together different actors and that are extremely powerful. And then when they go together, we can actually create change. Like, for example, the Global Urban Monitoring Framework that we have tried to pilot in our. Then we go at the EU level, much easier, because in reality, all the European Union cities, they depend in terms of legislation, budget, on Brussels. So in reality, let's say the harmonization also statistically is embedded. So the Eurostat is just taking the data from the national statistical office, etc. So again, very easy to work like this. So the European Union level was already embedded, in terms of consistency. And then we come to the local level. So the local level, on one end, in Madrid, we have we are lucky because it's a big city, but we have really a lot of availability of data and quality data, and we own the data. So it's the starting point is good. But to make work together the different departments is not. So in reality, let's say, trying to summarize, we found much more opportunities than challenges. The opportunities have been on one end, by doing this exercise, you just do a gap analysis of the data you have in the municipal level. So you see what to use. At the same time, in the same way, I mean, you eliminate overlaps that are actually quite important. But then in doing this, you foster interdepartmental cooperation in terms of statistical offices, because plus I discover, for example, in our city, we have 3 different bodies dealing with statistics. So to put all these people together has been extremely complicated, but once you do it, it's, I mean, in terms of efficiency and ownership, you just will not. And then the other 2 opportunities was, on one end, let's say the possibility to geo-referentiate the data. So we were able to create also the spatial dimension to it in order to have the decision, and the interoperability of the platform. So to connect our platform to the national one, to the European one at least, and now hopefully it will be available also in the UN one. So interoperability also was a big opportunity that came out from this context. Now the challenges are the few, but very, very important. So our exercise has been actually to build up the VLR without just using, let's say, what is called the operational program monitoring framework of the municipality. So in Madrid, we have in Spain, the mandate at local level is 4 years. In these 4 years, you have policies with allocated budgets, and these policies have targets and indicators. So we just actually harmonized our existing operational framework and the monitoring framework with the SDGs. So that's the difficult part, but it's also the part that creates the consistency, evidence, and the real argument, in our opinion. So in this sense, the challenge has been the following: 2030 is 2030. Our mandate is 4 years. So I mean, it's politically it's impossible to commit to a target that you cannot manage politically. The only one that where you can, but the reality are not few, and this is thanks to the fact that we are part of the European Union, are the European Union target that go beyond our mandate, because our state is committed as European Union and as state, so as a city, to target that go beyond the 2050 in terms of, for example, decarbonization. So the multi-level approach helped actually to fill some gaps that are structural because the mandate of facility. So if you want to do a serious work, you cannot commit for something that goes beyond your mandate because otherwise it's just narrative. And if you want to create a solid argument to advocate to have a better involvement in the policy cycle, in the multi-level governance framework, national, European, global, you need to have evidence, not just narrative. So that's why at the end, this VLR exercise helped us to improve our policy cycle, reinforcing the evidence-based dynamic, and this goes in hand with increasing, what this colleague was also saying, accountability and transparency in front of the citizens, and then give us a concrete argument to demonstrate to the national government, to the European government, to the global actors that without our contribution, they are not able to reach. I think I was already too long.
Thanks a lot. I mean, your experience is incredibly useful, and every time that I hear you talking, I always have something from what you're saying, and it's very important the fact that you always, and this is very true, specifically finding ourselves in this kind of fora where the narrative is powerful, but then when we go to the work at the local level, we need evidence, and we need evidence to support what we are saying, to support the policies, and to make sure that also we link that evidence with the real communities. Thank you, Nicolas. Thanks a lot. Matteo, then we have now the floor for the
final, the final session. Okay, so thanks everybody. Very honored to be here and to be called to moderate this last session of our meeting, in which we actually get to the local level and see the challenges and see what is happening at the local level. Because we have a wealth of cities in the world and in this room as well, which already have experiences, years of experiences in collecting this kind of data, preparing for VLRs, assessing with similar framework. We saw some of them in the previous section. We just saw the example of Madrid. Now I would like to go to a series of 3 cities, nations, Serbia, Bishkek in Kyrgyzstan, and Tbilisi in Georgia, and see with them what have been the main challenges, how have you responded to these challenges, and what are you doing to prepare for VLRs and such topics, so your concrete experiences in dealing with this kind of measurement. And I would start with Ms. Tanya Obradovic from the city government of Niš, Serbia. Tanya, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Matteo. Today, I will talk about 2 challenges related to SDG 11. One is people, mean all who carry out the goals. And second, data, all data, big and small. when we talk about people, two things are important: capacity and connectivity. Human resources in all institutions are one of the most important conditions for both good planning and implementation of goals. The speed of changes sets the speed with which employees must adapt and constantly learn new things. Unfortunately, in practice, this is not the case, especially with the public sector. It is believed that if you are employed in the public sector, you do a specific task, you have fixed working hour, and that's how it works for a year. Lately, things are slowly changing. There are motivated individuals who change some things by constant learning and progress, but it is not enough to see significant effects. Therefore, it is necessary to constantly and quickly improve the capacity of employees in order to keep up with the changes. Since the goals are interconnected, then the people who work on their implementation must also be connected. This connection does not necessarily have to be defined by law. It can also be realized outside the institutions. Currently, each institution has defined some of its own internal rules, which are rooted and understood as an axiom, and no one changes them because that would require a great commitment and the current instability of the system. In fact, those internal rules led to people minding their own business and not thinking outside a box. In this regard, with knowledge of people and after capacity building, we can create creative people who will use their knowledge to break all patterns and unnecessary boundaries, and in this way, connections will be made. Connections will be made. Second challenge, data. When we talk about data, two things are important: quality and sharing. In the last 10 years, there was a lot of talk about data because it should be the basis for decision making, for better planning, and for the effective realization of goals. But what happens if we don't have enough quality data? Then it can lead to wrong decisions and thus to failure to implement goals. The current situation is that the data is perceived sectorally within institutions, and in that most cases, data remain in those sectors. Someone, for example, collects data because the law defines that obligation, or that obligation is defined by the superiors. But in both cases, the data remain trapped with those sectors. They are mainly used as a proof of the work of those departments or as a fulfillment of a legal obligation. In this way, the only purpose of the data is to justify the salaries of the employees through the fulfillment of legal obligations. So what is quality data? Those that are collected with a purpose and with the idea of further use of data. If a collection system has a purpose, then data sharing will be established. In this way, a data network is established and the possibility of using data expands. And then, conclusion, we need education that will create creative people, and they will know a clear purpose of end of the process of which they are a part. Because of that, the city of Niš last year started and focused on capacity building activities. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tanya. Indeed, I like the way you phrase it, that the kind of data collection we need is actually a disruptive act in the context of 20th century bureaucracies that still dominate city organizations. It's not business as usual as we most often think about it. So on this note, let's move further east, and I'd like to hear from the city of Bishkek, where we have Mirim Kiralieva. Okay, so what has been the experience of Bishkek?
Thank you, Matteo. I do want to remember the very first mission of UNECE in February 2020, when we asked UNECE to pay more attention to the development of our informal settlements around the city. When we prepare our city profile, we established a working group at the level of department under the mayor's office that is responsible for informal settlements. But when we learned that the data is really so comprehensive, we decided to increase the level of this working group. But unfortunately, the pandemic began, and it was real testing for our teamwork. And I think that we did a great job in this case, shoulder by shoulder. But at the same time, I would like to mention that we have a problem of slow exchange of information between our departments. And also our government structure is changing rapidly. And if, for example, this agency is abolished, and then we are in search where this data we could find at this department or at another department. This is a problem for us. And also, I would like to mention that the most pressing challenge was of disaggregation of data. But in this context, also, I would like to mention that we, in this case, we should find the right person, because when we have discussions with the National Statistics Committee, they said that data is not disaggregated. We have a problem with the local data at the local level. But we are so fortunately to meet Ms. Madova, the mother of the Voluntary National Review in Kazakhstan. Yes, really, because when I asked several people who is responsible for the VNR, they said Madova. And thanks to Aysulu, we discovered that there is a SDG platform. This is a matter, yes, as you see, we have a lack of information between our departments. And we hope that all these lessons learned we will use during the preparation of the first ever voluntary local review. Thank you.
Thank you, Mirim. So data location, data disaggregation in particular, and the fact that data disaggregation is not a standard policy. So because local data is not always available at the resolution that we need to do that. Okay, so on this note, we move then to the city of Tbilisi in Georgia, where we have Vakhtang Lomiaya. Vakhtang, tell us a little bit about what happened in Tbilisi.
Thank you, Matteo. I would talk about general and specific examples for Tbilisi and ideas also from our Tbilisi city portfolio. And thank you for helping in preparing this document for us, which will support process in future, and it's very important. And as Professor Polaris told you during our first meeting last year, without evaluation, it's very difficult to proceed some steps, and evaluation gives you a wide picture what is actually happening, and it's a source and not the final aim. Final aim is exactly the sustainability and just stability, social, and political and economic flourishing, and giving people more they deserve. And this process is helping us already a lot. And from our document at the beginning, we had only 54% of data. We worked during the last months, and we have additionally 19% of data, which means that 3/4 of data is already existing. we are working with the National Statistics Agency, and we hope that only 6% of data will remain that we are unable to collect, and it's connected with additional expenses. And for example, noise pollution and measuring it. We have sensors in Tbilisi yet, and it's a challenge for future. But even underlining this means that we should pay attention for this, and we have to find sources and resources to create sensors and map of pollution for Tbilisi, which is very, very important for further regulations, which is not enough for this time. And also there will be several KPIs. We will ask you to specify what we mean, and then further definition. We do not go on the wrong way for collecting this. So when we talk about statistics and data, there are two very, very favorite statements for me, which I quite frequently remember. And first one is from Mark Twain, which we should think that all know, that there is lie and statistics. And the interpretation of this data is very important. And here comes competence, when we need also your help about, because interpretation of data is sometimes not very correct, and we need to be sure that these are correct. And there another statement, which means that incomplete data leads you to make mistake more bravely. If before we are taking a decision, we need to know that data we are based on are enough, and it's complete information for making next step. And if it's not so, we then need to work additionally, because we are not anymore sure that data we have collected is enough for taking decision, which will affect lots of population and their future. Once again, I want to underline that this process is very, very important for Tbilisi. Sustainability is history of sustainability is not a lot, it is not very long, but this is crucial for the development of Tbilisi, social, economic, political, environmental, and so on and so forth, that directions. And your help and the help of community gathered here, other cities, other governments, and international organizations is very important. We are open, and thank you once again for this possibility to take part in this process and for the future outcomes which we will have together. Thank you.
Thank you, Vatanga, also for pointing out the importance of partnering, which is a very fancy word, but then it means that somebody needs to do the work. So, which is not to be taken for granted, right? So, partnerships also need to be strategic, self-fulfilling, rewarding, and so on and so forth. And that requires a specific skill set on the part of the cities, which not always is in the skill set of city government. So thank you so much.
I will add the last issue, and as it was mentioned, it's important that data to be issued also and to be reached by population and others. And as we work with the Department of Statistics country, KPIs which will be collected and which is suitable for publishing, it will be all the time on the website of Tbilisi platform, and it will be reachable for researchers, universities, students, and public people also. Thank you.
Thank you also for, yes, the importance of open data, which was already referred to several times. So thank you to these three wonderful cities. Now we heard a little bit about concrete challenges that they faced. Now we move up one level, and we would like to hear some comments about what has just been shared by national government representatives. And I will start with Sinisa Kulia. Sorry if I mispronounce it.
Sinisa, yeah.
There was 100% chance that I would.
It's not easy.
Sinisa,
thank you. Thank you. This link between national and local level is extremely important, and somebody mentioned the bottom-up approach, but it's definitely important to combine top-down and bottom-up approaches. We need both, and that's one of the reasons why we are here. We can see the global level as some top level, and the recommendations of New Urban Agenda or International Guidance on Urban and Territorial Planning are very important. It's a kind of top-down as well, and it's very useful. It's useful to have frameworks. So national framework in Serbia that we have was, I will just briefly say, this is the National Spatial Plan from 1996, which was in force until 2010. And after that, we didn't have any spatial development indicators in it. But this was the next one. From 2010 to 2020, it had indicators for the first time. And then we introduced in 2010, we introduced monitoring in Serbia. And I've heard Anne Bush said that Switzerland has 104 development indicators. We have 106 here, development indicators. So very similar. We are similar sized countries, Switzerland and Serbia. So, but what is the challenge? The challenge is that we didn't manage to calculate all those 106 indicators. We calculated only 75 in 10 years. So they were not so much realistic. And another challenge is that they were not so well linked to the objectives of the spatial plan. So a big challenge is that the indicators should really link to the objectives on one side. So on that side, but on the other side, they should link to the implementation. So they should have the effects in space, in the territory, in cities, and that's why the local level is so important. So in UNECE, this is going to be the first voluntary local review in Serbia, and it is also very important. I would like also to mention Serbia is a candidate country for European Union. So that is an important dimension because SDGs and European integration are some complementary processes in Serbia. And we also look towards the TESPO network of European Union. So where we have some models of indicators, which is very useful. And in our national voluntary review, up to now, we have only one, which was made in 2019. We are planning to do the second one. And this local voluntary review in UNECE is going to be an input for that national, but as Shipra said, it's only one. We need more to have it, but it's the beginning. And we don't really have indicators at local level. But national indicators are very important as the framework. And I would also like to point out the importance of urban monitoring framework of UN Habitat, which from the last year, which is also very important and useful. And in our voluntary national review, we have only 38 SDGs calculated. Yet we've heard yesterday that there are 231. So 38 were calculated, and it is going to be an important step now for the local voluntary review in niche. Which are we going to choose? Which are the most meaningful, and so on. So as we have only 5 minutes, I'll stop here.
Thank you, Sinisa. If I can just, sorry to ask you directly a question, but can you give us an example of one of those indicators that was disconnected from, if you remember,
that we couldn't calculate and so on? Yes, for example, fragmentation. That was one of our colleagues who is specialist for indicators, and very optimistically, she gave us, it's a kind of European Union index. And it was too complex for our environmental protection agency to calculate it. So we, as Tanya was pointing out, we lack capacities, we need education, we need exchanges and so on. And finally, was it really the most important and so on? So there are many questions. We have some experience. So we are going to try really to have the meaningful indicators now for the VLR initiative.
Thank you so much. So second comment from the mother of VNRs in Pakistan, Ms. Aizula Manova. The floor is yours.
And I will help this. I apologize because I will speak Russian and I will help translate my talk file. Как и все страны ООН, Кыргызская республика присоединилась к целям устойчивого развития, и все цели, задачи, цели устойчивого развития включили в свои национальные программные документы через призму национальных приоритетов развития.
So, as other countries, the Kyrgyz Republic joined the 2030 agenda, and they aligned the SDGs in the national program. So basically, the SDGs were introduced into the national priority documents.
И для постоянного мониторинга реализации наших задач, приоритетов, мы совместно с Национальным статистическим комитетом сделали национальную платформу отчетности по целям устойчивого развития. И в 2019 году были размещены 107 глобальных и 57 национальных показателей.
And they established actually an online monitoring platform where they're using right now 107 global and 57 national indicators with disaggregation and metadata.
В 2020 году во время пандемии Кыргызская республика представила свой первый национальный добровольный обзор о ходе достижения цели устойчивого развития.
In 2020, Kyrgyzstan presented the first national voluntary review.
Сам процесс подготовки национального добровольного обзора был очень таким широким, да? Принимали участие все заинтересованные стороны, особенно активно принимали участие гражданское общество. Очень помогали нашим государственным органам в подготовке самого доклада.
So Kyrgyzstan used a very participatory approach to the development of the VNR with very wide engagement of the civil society who assisted the national government actually in the development of the VNR.
Национальный добровольный обзор, он охватил 16 целей, и в самом обзоре нет 14 целей, как нерелевантные для Кыргызской республики.
Kyrgyzstan used 16 SDGs, except number 14, because it's a landlocked country, so this is why only 16 SDGs were considered.
На сегодняшний день на национальной платформе осуществляется мониторинг 171 показателей.
So today, this online platform includes 170 indicators, as 107
из которых 110 это глобальные и 61 это национальные.
171 SDG indicators, out of which 110 are global indicators of SDGs, and then 61 are national indicators.
Хотелось бы сказать, что все показатели размещены в формате SDMX, и Кыргызская республика является одним из пионеров, который внедрил этот стандарт SDMX в регионе.
And also on this online platform, Kyrgyzstan is using this SDMX format, which is the international standard for data and metadata exchange. So it's one of the actually pioneers is using in this this system for the data storage.
На 1 января 2023 года 61 показатель доступен в дезагрегации по географическому положению.
Since January 2023, 61 indicators are available in disaggregated format by geographical location.
Это означает, что по 7 областям Кыргызской республики и по 2 городам Бишкек-Ош, как города республиканского значения.
So basically you can see differentiations on the sub-regional level. There are 7 regions And also there are two cities, Bishkek and Osh, which are national level cities.
34 показателя по полу, 24 по возрасту, 22 по образованию и по 14 показателям это по национальности дезагрегировано.
So, and also disaggregation was made 34 indicators for disaggregated by gender, 24 by age, 22 by the income, 22 by education, and 14 by nationality. So there is a quite high disaggregation of the indicators.
Ну, есть проблемы в части дезагрегации данных по миграционному статусу и по лицам с ограниченными возможностями.
Yeah, but there are still gaps in the development of integrated data on the status of migration, which for Kyrgyzstan is very important, and the persons with disabilities.
В настоящее время есть уже статистический сборник «Статистика целей устойчивого развития Кыргызской Республики за 2014-2020 годы». Публикация «Гендер и ЦУР» в настоящее время готовится к публикации «Цель устойчивого развития и молодежь».
They have issued already the statistical reports monitoring WASH indicators in Kyrgyz Republic 2014-2018. There was also gender and sustainable development goals, and they're planning to prepare statistical collection on the SDGs and young people.
Эти публикации, они не как стандартные, да, в виде таблиц, а он больше для визуализации включены очень много инфографик, а также описание этих показателей.
So for this statistical reports, they did not use the usual way of putting like boring tables, but here they used a lot of narrative description, like stories, but also infographics.
Сама система этого мониторинга отчетности на глобальном уровне приводится как один из успешных примеров построения национальной системы мониторинга ЦУР среди других стран.
Yeah, so as they were in New York, they were recognized at a global level one of the best practices in how to develop a statistical system for monitoring SDGs.
В рамках Национальным статистическим комитетом принята дорожная карта, и в рамках него сейчас планируется мониторить новых 60 показателей.
So the National Statistics Committee developed as a roadmap for monitoring SDGs, and as a part of it, they decided to monitor additional 60 indicators.
И вот в апреле текущего года у нас прошла перепись населения из жилищного фонда, который даст дополнительные показатели в дезагрегации по 7 позициям.
So they just completed actually housing census, which provide additional information, disaggregated information on the housing population.
Какие мы уроки извлекли по итогам подготовки национального добровольного обзора? Со стороны гражданского общества и местных сообществ было предложено создать платформу взаимодействия по целям устойчивого развития, которые правительством и нашими партнерами было принято положительно. В настоящее время к концу года ожидаем создания онлайн-платформы для взаимодействия по целям устойчивого развития со всеми заинтересованными сторонами.
So what are the lessons learned? First is the importance of participatory approach. So they very much appreciated the engagement of the civil society. And by end of the year, they will be establishing an online platform for cooperation between national government and the civil society. And this was well taken by both the civil society groups, but also by the government.
Несмотря на то, что мы как бы большую работу проделали, но, как практика показала, очень мало были задействованы органы местного самоуправления в части понимания целей устойчивого развития, в части внедрения показателей целей устойчивого развития, задач на своем локальном уровне, программные документы и в части отслеживания этих показателей.
Second, lessons learned, importance of the engagement of the cities and municipalities, because this time it was the data were collected at the regional level, plus 2 cities of the national importance. But so far, most of the cities were not engaged, not into the consultation on what indicators to use, how to use, and also in the interpretation of the indicators. So this needs to be strengthened.
Сейчас ведется работа в части повышения потенциала как государственных органов, так и органов местного самоуправления.
Yeah, so this is why they're really trying their best to develop capacity of the national authorities, but especially local authorities into the engagement in these monitoring activities.
И в части вовлечения всех заинтересованных сторон, особенно бизнеса, молодежи в реализацию целей устойчивого развития. И на уровне правительства уже начата работа по подготовке следующего национального добровольного обзора.
So what they're also doing is trying to engage local governments, but also other stakeholders which were not engaged so far, because Kyrgyzstan has very strong civil society, but now they're trying to engage business community and the youth.
И то, что Бишкек будет готовить свой обзор местного уровня, это будет одним из таких больших вкладов в следующую подготовку национального добровольного обзора.
So the next VNR will be in 2025, and the fact that Bishkek is doing its VNR will be an important input in the development of the VNR for 2025.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Manova. It's been extremely precious also for bringing up the importance of everything you said, but also of communication of these indicators in the most accessible way possible. So thank you very much for sharing the experience of Kyrgyzstan. And now I'd like to call on stage our last commenters, Ms. Nadia Tsikadze. There's a 99% probability I messed it up too. Sorry, apologies if I pronounced it. From the Planning and Coordination Unit and Administration of the Government of Georgia. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Good afternoon to everybody, and thank you for this great opportunity to talk about Georgia's experience from both of the perspective, from national and from local perspective. So I will try to be short, but I will want to discuss both of these perspectives, since the topic of this event is very important to be mentioned, the both perspectives. From the national level, I would like to mention that for Georgian government, the Agenda 2030 and its implementation of the goals is the priority for the country. And we started to join this initiative from the very beginning, from 2015. And we have on a national level the national document, which is a matrix with all the indicators and the goals and objectives. And as a result, we have all nationalized 17 goals and almost 100 objectives and 200 indicators. And we are implementing this national document and we're monitoring annually the implementation of the indicators. And to mention and to be focused more on evidence-based policy making and the implementation, of the indicators. I would like to mention the policy development system in Georgia, which is in the reform process, and we are trying to improve this direction to be in line with the European standards. And one of the principles of policy development is evidence-based policy making, which is the main priority for the government, because without the data, we are not able to measure any progress, and without the measurement of the progress, it's impossible to talk about the improvement of any direction. So our goals that are nationalized on a country level are very linked with the policy that were created by the government. We just recently created the national level policy document, which is until 2030. And we include all 17 goals that are priority for the countries. And the goals that are defined in these documents are linked with the SDG goals. And we define the more indicators when we have in a national documents of the SDGs. So to ensure that all the SDGs are improving, and we are on the right track to implement all these indicators that were defined on a country level. So we, the country already submitted VNR 2 times. So one of them was in 2016 and was in 2020, and the next one we plan to submit it 2024. We consider the VNR as a kind of evaluation of the process, because when we're talking about the VNR, we're talking about not all the best practices and improvement in this regard, but we are talking about the challenges and the problems that the country has in terms of the implementation of the indicators and implementation of the Agenda 2030. So while we are working on the VNR, we always considering the identifying the right problems in challenges, which is the main factors kind of when we're talking about the policy, evidence-based policy. Based on these challenges, we're trying to find the right ways to improve the implementation of these goals. And from 2021, Georgia started the localization process, and we are trying to have the same approach on the local level that we have on the national level. So on national level, we also have the institutional setting, which is council and working groups. And on a local level, we also created in each of the municipalities, we created the local council and the local working group, which will work on the implementation of the SDGs on the local level. And we're also developing the documents on a local level, which is in line on the document of the national level. And we identified the relevant goals, objectives, and indicators based on the local context. We consider the local context to identify the local indicators. So far, we don't have any local voluntary review, because we are considering the first phase, which is the development of the local documents with all the indicators is the main priority from the beginning. And after that, based on these documents, we will be able to develop this local voluntary review to measure the progress and to identify the problems and challenges and to evaluate the process, because we're considering VNR as well as the VLR as the evaluation and monitoring of the process. And these documents, these are the documents and reports which should ensure the evidence-based policy making, because all these indicators that are mentioned in the document on a national or on a local level are linked to the national or the local policy documents and priority documents, and these SDGs are also linked to the budget of the national budget and the local budget. And so we're trying to ensure these linkages in order to be on the right track. And the last issue I want to mention that these processes are very transparent and inclusive. In all these processes, the other stakeholders are also involved, and we are ensuring to have the consultations not only with the stakeholders, but also with the public. So we are like two ways of consultations. One is with the stakeholders. Even on the local level, we ensure that all these documents that are created to be created and developed in with the inclusiveness, and be involved in this process the stakeholders as well as the public. And we are always publishing the information about any documents that are created on the website, on the special website. On a national level, we have the special monitoring website, which also have the possibilities to publish any kind of documents, to invite the public to be involved in the consultations. And on the local level, the municipalities, they all of them publish these documents on their websites. So all these processes are very inclusive and transparent. And this public consultation we're also considering as the core of the evidences when we're talking about the evidence-making policies. So this consultation is very core parts for ensuring these evidences and evidence-making policy. So I will stop here in order to maintain your time as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you also for stressing the importance of the organization and again of consultation and stakeholder involvement, which again, we always speak about it, but then it requires conflict management capabilities because the involvement of other stakeholders is not always smooth. And therefore, thank you for bringing this also to our attention. We heard from the cities, we heard from the Ministry of Construction, the Ministry of Economy, and the Administration of Government. And now I would like to ask our colleague Pedro Neves for 1 minute comment on what emerged from this discussion, since you are a world-renowned expert in VLRs and their implementation.
Thank you, Matteo. I believe I was going to talk about the experience about the Japan and how Japan is implementing SDGs. But basically, I think a lot of what I've heard is what I've also learned from Japan. I think we need strong leadership from central government, a strong message, top down, towards the cities to implement SDGs. I think the second point is about strong leaderships in the cities. It's vital that mayors wish to implement VLRs, and therefore we have a strong leadership top down and a strong leadership bottom up. And then I would say it's vital that we fall in love with SDGs. And this is an emotional part of implementation, of SDG implementation. And everything that we've heard here is on one hand about figures, on the other hand about emotion. And this leads me to the third dimension. And the third dimension is the involvement of the private sector. And again, the first phrase of the VNR in Japan is we are going to achieve and implement the SDGs with private sector participation. And in this case, and this is something I would like to share with you, is the result of the SDG platforms in Japan. And the SDG platforms in Japan is a multiple level of management taking place. We have the city level, we have representatives from the central level, and then we have the academia, the civil society, and the private sector. And I think this is essential. The last point, I believe, is it is mandatory that SDG implementation is fun. We have to go, at the end of the day, to our homes happy, because we knew that we are changing the paradigm of development and we are really improving the life of people, creating better business and protecting the planet. And so I think from the different sides, we see a wave, a VLR movement taking over. And what is very impressive is that we studied this in Japan. They were the first ones because they are the only ones that have the VNR and the VLRs. And so the first ones in 2015, We saw Shimokawa with 3,000 people, very small. And then we see Tokyo with 40 million. And we see a global movement, a happy movement, because we feel good, because we are doing something for the people. And I think at the end, it's about bringing the people first. So congratulate all of you. And I hope my minute was not.
Perfect, perfect. And I wonder, since we are so lucky to have also Mr. Zimmerman in the room, I was wondering if you have a small comment as well about what you heard, since you are the director of the Strasbourg Europol project.
Thank you for giving me the floor. Yeah, it was very, very interesting hearing all the experience of everybody. We are facing the same problem in France also. The right connection between local levels, national authorities, and even I would say Strasbourg is hosting the European Parliament with the European level also is very, very important. And I'm very happy also to let you know that we are engaging for a local voluntary review. We are going to work on especially three main topics on building people capacity, on having a just and sustainable economy, and also on working on the food strategy, because all these topics, entry points, are very leveraging our strategies. So yes, and also facing the challenge to have a better set of indicators aligned with all the levels, but also aligned with political strategy in order to not to build too difficult set of indicators. Indicators are helping to have the decision. What you said first are not making the decision, and we have to let the politicians also have their word to engage more with citizens and go forward for a real transformation. The main word for me is SDGs are transformative utopia. So we are.
On that note, I think we can, beautiful note, I think we can thank you very much. Thank all the presenters for sharing their experiences and views. And I'll give the floor back to Gulnara and to Spiro.
Yes, thank you very much, Matteo. I think we had a super productive discussion. So I think, we have quite a challenging task how to document all that, right? We were discussing that. We need to document all the stories also from colleagues, and I'm so happy, and Pedro, so happy having you here with us, continuation and Madrid as well. So we will discuss it tomorrow at our partners meeting. With Matteo and Spiro as our Center of Excellence are supporting preparation of report for this meeting. So therefore, I will give floor to Spiro to say what we're going to do next, what you think we should be doing next.
Thank you, Gulnara, and thank you, Sipra. Actually, this was an amazing session, and but I'm going to go slightly different. I'm going to say that I feel that I was a cheerleader, like all of the people who spoke today, or almost all of the people who spoke today. So I would like to think for a minute that I'm the student from Santa Cruz who's sitting there, and one day he's going to be seated on this table. So what did he learn? I'm also sorry that I'm going to say what you learned, but I will try to think how I would be 40 years not. So the point is that when I'm going to enjoy the fruits of the VLRs and the SDGs, retiring somewhere in Greece on a nice island, they are going to be seated on this table and they're going to continue our work. So if I were them, I would like to say that a community is being built, we learn from each other. I would say that I did not hear much about policies. Nadia said, she was the last one to say, that evidence-based policies. We talked about evidence, but we did not talk about policies. So I think we need to start focusing, what are the policies that we based on evidence or non-evidence? That's the most important thing. The next thing I really appreciate from UNECE that we have this excellent analysis of people and data. I would like to see that as a positive. In other words, what the young generation can do to educate people and also make sure they have quality data. And having said all this, it's important to remember that the devil is in the details. This is what we say on the other side of the Atlantic, because there is a devil here. And we have to look at the details, and we have to learn from each other, and we have to keep building up. And I really appreciate the presentation of the Castel Santiago, because they mentioned specifics. It's not by chance that actually Matteo was working with them for 18 months. Yes, all of you. And I think we need to learn from what they did. Of course, someone's going to say they have a lot of resources, but it's not a matter of resource, a matter of educating people and making them participate, to love what they're doing, as Pedro said. So, amazing session. Let's come to the policies next time, that they were based on evidence, broader. And actually, a student from California is going to think that this community is not only in certain part of the world, but includes very important countries like Georgia, Kyrgyzstan, and Serbia. So thank you very much all. Thank you, Gulnara, for giving me the opportunity. I think we made huge progress since last time, and I'm looking for more next time.
Yeah, we'll have recording, so I think we will be able to.
Yes, thank you.
Map the things. Actually, if the students are here, and Alexander, thank you so much for bringing your students here. Anything from the students? I mean, actually, what was your feedback? How did you see the session? Please go ahead.
Good. I just wanted to say I appreciate your insight about doing a bottom-up perspective and also a top-down perspective. That's super important going forward in talking about addressing local needs. I guess one question that I do have is, when we are addressing local needs, how can we make sure that we are prioritizing and also empowering local needs?
Thank you so much. You also wanted to add? Let's go ahead.
I really appreciate and to talk about specific policies, because it is a bit hard to follow sometimes in those meetings without actually showing what sort of steps that you take. So it's nice to emphasize that.
Yes, please.
Yeah, thank you all. I think the conversation on education is essential to understanding the data culture. Being a representative, understanding that data is empowering is a barrier for a lot of instances. I would maybe pose the question, just in terms of Spiro's note, thinking about, there's a lot of conversation mapping to the SDG indicators or to the UNEP indicators. Is there maybe a value in comparing your city or your country in a VLR or VNR to other countries, other cities? Is that a priority in
Well, that's actually an interesting question. I wonder, Chipre is good to have you at the end of the meeting. We have lots of bilateral meetings, but I wonder if global monitoring framework is going to help us to compare the cities and the local 26. Maybe
I can say a few things about that, but thanks very much. And I think we started the first thing we said today was that, and Paula said this, that the purpose of the VLR was both looking inwards and outwards, right? So first of all, it's to assess your own state of affairs vis-a-vis the SDGs, to be able to establish your own baseline and measure your own progress against where you were 5 years ago or 3 years ago. And then, in addition to that, look at your peers. We are very cautious when we say compare with others, because every city is different. Contextuality is very important. But very often you find that if you compare cities across a certain size, intermediary cities, small-sized cities, medium-sized cities often have the same kinds of challenges, regardless of which continent they're on. You find a sort of a peer community to compare with. But finding that peer community between comparisons is very important. Otherwise, you will end up with a sense of overachievement or underachievement or a false sense of where you stand. So comparison is important, but not in a vacuum. Comparison within a particular type of, and I hope that the urban monitoring framework will help us do that with a harmonized set of indicators. Not all are easy to collect, as we know. Not all are free to collect, as another point was made. But whatever 60–70% of them can be collected, if we can compare across size class of cities, then we would be able to draw some interesting parallels. Thanks, Gulnara.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Ms. Chipra. So if no any final remarks or questions, so until the next meeting. Yes, thank you so much for your participation.
I think that is